Hello and good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Hafiz Marzukhi. Despite the turbulence in global markets triggered by Trump-era tariffs, ASEAN continues to stand as a symbol of optimism and resilience, with its regional trade now surpassing $3.5 trillion. However, Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim warns that with a sweeping range of tariffs in place across nearly every country, the world is now witnessing the collapse of the global order.
In light of this, he urged ASEAN to deepen intra-regional dependence and cooperation among member states.
This means strengthening inter-ASEAN trade. We must move beyond rhetoric to execution. Tariff liberalization within the region is largely complete, but regulatory alignment, cross-border logistics, digital connectivity remain unfinished business. It also means safeguarding and expanding our external linkages. Our dialogue and sectoral partners span 6 continents. Few regional blocs can claim such a network. As chair this year, Malaysia will prioritize the revitalization of strategic platforms such as the ASEAN Plus 3 as mechanisms for economic resilience.
Anwar made these remarks during his keynote address titled ASEAN 2025, Forging a Resilient and Inclusive Future at the ASEAN Investment Conference. He reiterated Malaysia's vision of transforming ASEAN into a prosperous, sustainable and inclusive region. However, he cautioned that this ambition demands strong political will, substantial capital commitment, resilience and rapid execution of sub-regional initiatives. Citing Malaysia and Singapore as an example, the Prime Minister highlighted the establishment of the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, JSSEZ, as a step in that direction.
Other than that, Anwar also stated that Malaysia's vision is to continue positioning ASEAN as a prosperous, sustainable and inclusive region. However, he stressed that achieving this requires strong political will, substantial capital investment, resilience and swift progress in implementing initiatives at a sub-regional level.
As an example, the Prime Minister pointed to the establishment of the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, JSSEZ, by Malaysia and Singapore.
While this will not be a silver bullet, it is nevertheless a significant and an unprecedented step. By lowering barriers and coordinating policy between these two closely linked economies, we create a demonstration effect, a case study in cross-border economic logic. Malaysia is also committed to invest in developing our border areas, just as in the northern peninsula with Thailand and Sabah and Sarawak border with Kalimantan, to promote economic activities for the benefit of people in both sides of the border.
The Prime Minister also reminded member states that resilience requires investment in infrastructure capable of withstanding natural disasters, both in literal and financial sense. He noted that the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly severe, and ASEAN nations must strengthen their ability to manage disaster risks, protect critical infrastructure, and safeguard vulnerable communities. The green economy, he added, is no longer merely an environmental issue, but a strategic economic necessity.
Growth is no longer a matter of environmental virtue, but a strategic economic necessity. Technologies such as carbon capture, circular production models, and low-emission innovations are not peripheral experiments. Indeed, they are poised to define the industrial landscape of the coming decade.
The death toll from the devastating earthquake that hit Myanmar on March 28th has now surpassed 3,600. Unicef emergency specialist Louis Gorton shares the current situation on the ground more than a week after the 7.7 magnitude tremor first struck.
This earthquake has been devastating for the people of Myanmar. UNICEF now has teams on the front lines in the worst affected areas in Sagaing, in Naypyidaw and Mandalay. And what we're hearing back from them is that the situation is really catastrophic, especially for children. Entire communities have been flattened. There's huge damage to homes and critical infrastructure. Most of the affected areas still don't have electricity supplies or telecommunications. We've seen schools and hospitals that either destroyed or completely unusable. And because of water supplies have been disrupted, water is beginning to run out in some areas. Our teams in the field are reporting they see children and their families sleeping in the open, exposed to the heat and rain with no access to clean water, food, or basic medical care. And children have lost parents and caregivers. So some are searching for them, and parents desperately looking for their missing children. And as you can imagine, the psychological trauma there is immense, particularly in the light of these ongoing aftershocks that we're experiencing in many of the affected areas.
Prior to the quake, Myanmar was already facing civil conflict, public health emergencies, and climate-related disasters. Louis discusses how this latest disaster has compounded existing challenges for children and their families.
What we see in Myanmar now is nearly half of the children are living in poverty. More than 1 million children are unvaccinated, and a third of school-aged children were out of school even before the earthquake. So the earthquake has only deepened and compounded these issues, putting more children at risk, and it's really increased the need for urgent life-saving support. A particular concern now is the potential for disease outbreaks. Many of the earthquake-affected areas were impacted by a cholera and acute watery diarrhea outbreak since June last year. And so now that we have water supplies cut, lack of sanitation, people living in the open, and the health facilities overwhelmed, this could really be catastrophic if cases begin to increase. Beyond the physical harm, children in emergencies also face increased psychological distress and trauma, and unfortunately, they can be exposed to exploitation and abuse.
Based on reports from the field, earthquake victims in Myanmar are in urgent need of food, water, safe shelter, and medical care. Louis highlights the challenges in delivering aid and support to those affected.
The earthquake has damaged vital infrastructure, including telecommunications towers, airports, roads, and bridges. And so that is slowing down relief efforts, as it means that we may need to take longer or alternative routes to reach affected populations, or use smaller vehicles so that we can safely transport supplies over bridges that might be damaged, that kind of thing. But we are pushing through. The lack of funding is another significant challenge. Myanmar was in the midst of an ongoing complex and chronic humanitarian crisis, and it was one of the most underfunded crises globally. So Unicef is now urgently appealing for $28 million to kickstart the initial response. And this immediate funding will help us provide life-saving support, including clean water, sanitation, medical supplies, temporary shelter, psychosocial support, and emergency education.
Power and telecommunications services in homes affected by the gas pipeline fire in Putra Heights will be fully restored by April 11th. Selangor Infrastructure and Agriculture Committee Chairperson Dato' Izham Hashim says this will apply to all houses except for those severely damaged by the blast.
The total damage to homes affected was estimated at 65.4 million ringgit, including the cost of wiring repairs. Meanwhile, Izham said investigations into the cause of the incident was still ongoing. Selangor Menteri Besar Dato' Sri Amiruddin Shari is expected to disclose further details once the state government receives conclusive findings. Following this, safety measures for the gas pipeline would be implemented. Amiruddin previously said technical probes into the explosion would only begin on April 15th, after the ground of the site has stabilized. Work to strengthen and stabilize the site began on Monday.
We'll go for a short break. Stay with us.
Kerap menggaru kulit kepala disebabkan kelumumur, masalahnya lebih mendalam. Gunalah Head and Shoulders menembusi 5 lapisan untuk membasmi kelumumur dan kegatalan. Bebas kelumumur sehingga 100%. Head and Shoulders diuji secara dermatologi. Dimasak seikhlas rasa. Air tangan insan istimewa. Masak bersama Harmoni Raya. Dapatkan resepi inspirasi di Maggi.my.
Dah cuba elak panas terik, tapi kulit kepala masih gatal dan berminyak? Mungkin ia kelumumur. Gunalah Head and Shoulders. Berkesan menghapuskan kelumumur sehingga 100% bebas kelumumur. Head and Shoulders.
US President Donald Trump says he has no plans to pause global tariffs despite mounting pressure from the world's stock markets. He also reiterates his threat to impose an additional 50% tariff on China if it does not withdraw its 34% retaliatory levy soon.
European and Asian markets both slumped for another consecutive trading day as Trump's tariff policies continue to send shockwaves through global supply chains. If implemented, the latest move by Trump could leave some US companies paying up to 104% in taxes on certain imports from China. The president has, however, said the door remains open for fair and good deals with every country. In response, China said it refused to bow to what it called blackmail from the US, vowing to fight to the end. Chinese officials are also meeting with private domestic companies to discuss dealing with the latest sweeping tariffs.
The US Supreme Court has ruled that the administration of President Donald Trump can continue deporting Venezuelan migrants under an 18th century wartime law. However, the court mandated that deportees must be granted reasonable time and a chance to challenge their removal.
In the 5-4 ruling, the top court overturned a lower federal court's attempt to temporarily block the deportation of alleged gang members to El Salvador. The lower court had ruled that the actions under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act required further scrutiny. Trump claimed the migrants were members of the Tren de Aragua gang conducting what he calls irregular warfare against the US and said they could be removed under the act that was last used during World War II. So far, at least 137 people have been deported by his administration under the Alien Enemies Act, a move that has sparked widespread condemnation from rights groups. The Alien Enemies Act grants the US president broad powers to detain or deport nationals of an enemy nation without following the usual processes. It had been passed as part of a series of laws in 1798 when the US believed it would enter a war with France.
The Trump administration is cutting over $1.3 billion in US foreign aid, cutting vital programs in Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Somalia, and Gaza. The UN World Food Programme warns these cuts could be a death sentence for millions facing starvation.
Among the programs terminated are food assistance by the WFP, support for women and girls, and aid to at least 6 NGOs. The cuts also impact the State Department's Refugee Bureau, leaving entire communities without a lifeline. The White House has yet to comment, and the UN says it is still seeking clarity. In a post on X, WFP Chief Cindy McCain said funding cuts will deepen hunger, fuel instability, and make the world far less safe. This move is part of the Trump administration's push to dismantle USAID, with billions in life-saving programs cut since January.
Now that report wraps up AWANI Tonight. Check out our web portal, keeping you informed on the critical events shaping our world, all in one place at international.astroawani.com. That's all for now. I'm Hafiz Marzukhi. Thanks for watching and good night.